Some nights I still close my eyes. I can perfectly remember that feeling, the silence, the darkness, the absolute darkness around me, and I can see that horrible figure again, standing in the middle of the road. We're starting another October of stories, another month of terror where, if possible, we're going to try to scare you more than usual. So I hope you're ready, because we're doing everything we can, because this is going to be the scariest October of night stories yet. In October, sad stories are over. We start in 5, 4, 3, 2... My name is Chuy, and this story happened to me a few years ago in the Ecatepec neighborhood where I grew up. Those who know are aware of what those neighborhoods up in the hills are like, places where no one goes in unless they're from there, and where we all know each other, for better or worse. Since childhood, I learned to get along with everyone, even the crazy ones in the area. I don't mean it in a bad way, that's just what we all call them around here, kind of affectionately. They're those guys who once had a home, a family, a job, but for one reason or another ended up living on the street, surviving with their little bottle of Tenayan, that cheap liquor that costs just a few pesos. Among all of them was Johnny Oregon. We called him that because his name was Juan, but he always told stories about when he went to work in Oregon, over there in the United States. He lasted 6 months before they deported him. During that time, he lost all the savings he had gathered to cross and get over there. To make things worse, when he returned, his wife had already left with someone else. He couldn't even recover the rented house. The woman moved out a month after he did, despite still accepting his rent money each month. He had nothing, no family, no home, no will to continue, and that's how he faded away. He ended up living on the street with the drunks and crazy people. Even so, we all knew him. He was part of the scenery, and he was a good person. One night, around 4 a.m, Brandon and I were coming back from a party in another neighborhood. And yes, that's my buddy's name, Brandon, even though people make fun of it sometimes. We were going to stay at his place, and to get there, you have to go up these really long and steep stairs. Cars can't go up there anymore. We walked calmly and weren't afraid of being robbed since everyone there knows each other. Halfway there, in the darkest part of the stairs, we saw a figure standing by its silhouette. We knew it was Johnny, but he looked strange. He was standing on his toes, upright, motionless. Brandon shouted at him, but he didn't reply. Then we saw how he started moving like he was having a seizure. His arms were flailing in a strange way, like he was being electrocuted. Standing there. We got worried and ran toward him, and that's when we saw him clearly. He wasn't alone. There was another figure behind him, hugging him, holding him up. I don't know how to explain it, that thing that peeked out from behind Johnny to look at us. Before I continue, I want to be clear. We weren't high or into anything weird. We had a few beers, yeah, but that's it. What we saw was completely real. Behind him was a very tall woman. She had a young, thin body, but her face was that of an old woman. I'm not exaggerating when I say she looked like a 100-year-old woman. She was standing completely upright, hugging Johnny from behind, holding him as if he were a doll. She wore a long black dress like an old bride's and laughed. I don't know if she was laughing at us or at him, but that laugh was the worst part. Then we saw her bite him. She bit him around the back of the neck, between the neck and the back, like she was an animal. That's when we both dashed downstairs without looking back. When we got to the bottom of the stairs, we ran into some of Brandon's friends, older guys, and we told them what we had seen. They laughed, thought we were exaggerating, but said they would go upstairs to check on good old Johnny Oregon. We kept running to my house, still nervous, but once we were farther away, we started looking for an explanation. We swore we must have seen it wrong, and we were more worried that Brandon's friends would always make fun of us. But it wasn't like that. Because when they went up, they didn't find anything on the stairs, not even a trace of him. To tell the truth, Johnny never showed up again. No one ever saw him again, not the next day or after that. He simply disappeared. On the stairs, right where we saw him, there was a huge stain left behind. It wasn't blood, it was like a dark, sticky grease. To my knowledge, there was no legend before then. But when we started telling people about that experience, some folks from the neighborhood in other areas told us that they had seen something like that before. And obviously the characteristics of that woman were very, very unique. I'm not saying that she is because I don't believe in them, but someone told me that people say she's a witch, just a witch, that's all. But they had never heard of her taking anyone away. I ask you to ask the people around here, the group, if anyone else has seen her. The stain still hasn't gone away to this day. Every time I go visit Brandon, I see it there, and I don't know. It makes me sad to think about Johnny because he wasn't a bad person. He had a hard, unfair life, and he didn't deserve to just disappear like that. I just hope he's okay, or at least that he's still alive, drinking his Tanaya somewhere in the world. Hi Uriel, this is Sylvia, a big fan of Relatos de la Noche. I always listen to you on Spotify while working or before bed. I have to confess that I'm quite a skeptical person, or at least I think so. I don't know if it's denial or if I really am, because throughout my life many paranormal things have happened to me, but I almost always try to downplay them. This time I want to share with you a different experience, one that I haven't been able to forget and that still makes me very curious to this day. I don't know if it really fits as a horror story, but it is something inexplicable, at least for me. I've never found a logical answer to what we experienced that night in 2011. At that time, I was living in Cancun with Carlos, my partner, and our 5-month-old baby. We had a stable relationship, and I felt lucky for the family we had built. Since I didn't have any family there, we used to visit my in-laws a lot, who lived just 15 minutes away from us by car. They loved me very much and always made me feel like part of the family. One afternoon, Carlos came home from work and decided we should go see them. I didn't ask if he had let them know. We just got in the car and left. Our baby was in the back behind the passenger seat, safely secured in his car seat. When we arrived, I took the car seat off the base. It was always a bit difficult for me. Carlos took him inside as I locked the car and got the diaper bag. When I walked in, my baby was in his car seat on the floor, and Carlos sat on the couch flipping through channels with the remote. My in-laws were going back and forth getting things ready to leave. I went over to greet them, and they told me they were going to see an uncle for a business matter, but they insisted that we stay and wait for them, so we did. They left after 6 in the evening. I remember checking the dining room clock when my mother-in-law said they'd return around 7. Since they were only going 5 minutes away, it seemed reasonable. I sat by Carlos and shifted the baby carrier to make room for my legs. My baby was very calm. He could stay there for a long time without getting fussy. I remember we started watching the movie Gladiator. I told Carlos that I had never seen it, and he replied something about the plot, and that's the last thing I remember. Next, I woke up on my side on the floor. Carlos was in front of me, also lying on his side, both of us with pillows under our heads. Behind me, my baby was still in his carrier, asleep. I sat up, and the feeling was very strange. My body felt heavy, as if I were sedated. That feeling between deep sleep and reality, where you know you're not fully awake, unable to react properly. I managed to turn toward the clock in the dining room. It was after 9:30 at night. I remember thinking, it's already late, we'd better go. I woke up Carlos. He got up and took the baby carrier while our son was still sound asleep. I stood up with a strange calm, picked up some cushions, and carelessly put them on the couch. We got in the car. While Carlos was securing the baby, I sank into the seat with the same drowsy feeling. During the ride, everything looked dreamlike to me. My blinks felt long and slow, and I turned a little to look at my partner. While I was driving, I watched him as he just looked at the road without saying a word. I wasn't scared or worried. I didn't even think about how my son needed to eat when I was breastfeeding him, every few hours. We arrived home. This time, Carlos carried down the baby carrier and the diaper bag. Upon entering, you first saw the living room and a bathroom under the stairs dividing it from the dining room. He headed over there. I heard him drag a chair to sit down, but before that, he left the baby carrier in the middle of the living room and the diaper bag on the couch next to the stairs. I took my baby out. He was still asleep. I told Carlos without looking up, and he replied that it was fine, that he would work for a while before going upstairs. I went upstairs, laid my son in his crib, and that night I completely broke my routine. I always bathed him at 8:30, breastfed him, burped him, put him in the crib, and stayed for a while talking to him until he fell asleep. That night, I put him to bed and went to my room. I sat on the bed, let myself fall back, and for a moment I looked at a huge bright star through the window, and I fell asleep like that, with my feet still on the floor. I woke up already in my pajamas, neatly tucked in bed. Carlos was sleeping soundly next to me. I glanced at the clock on the nightstand. It was nearly 11 at night. I realized that I hadn't bathed my baby despite the time, so I decided to do it. I got ready and took him to the bathtub. I undressed him, put him in the special baby seat inside the tub, bathed him, dried him, and dressed him. And the amazing thing is that he never woke up, not with the water, not with the movement, not even to eat. He was completely asleep, and I wasn't worried at all. I just didn't analyze anything. I laid him back in his crib, cleaned everything as usual, left the bathtub aside to dry, and went to bed. But remember that I was still in the same state. Everything seemed like it was in a dream. At 7 in the morning, my alarm went off. This time I woke up normally. Carlos was still sleeping. I went to the bathroom and then to my baby's room. He was already awake, calm, looking at his hanging mobile. When I picked him up, I noticed something very strange. One of the sleeves of his little outfit was completely soaked, so much that when I picked him up, a trickle of water ran down his arm. But the rest, his other arm, his body, the bed, the sheet, the mattress, were all dry, except for a small spot where that arm was resting. It was too much water for such a small area to be wet. I quickly changed it and went to the sink to wring out the sleeve. It was quite a lot of water. When I went downstairs with my baby in my arms, I grabbed the diaper bag that Carlos had left on the couch the night before. When I picked it up, something splashed my foot. The diaper bag was leaking water from one of the corners. I opened it and saw buildup inside. It didn't make sense. There was nothing liquid inside, just a pack of baby wipes. I called out to Carlos, yelling for him to come quickly. He came from the kitchen, because while I was watching our son, he had already gone downstairs and was getting ready to make breakfast. Confused, he looked in the bag and saw a small amount of water collected in the diaper bag's waterproof cover. On the floor, the spilled liquid, and he asked me what was going on. Why was there water? That's when I remembered the night before, how strange I felt the whole time I just mentioned it. He stayed thoughtful and told me something that chilled my blood. You won't believe me, but I can't remember how we got home. Surprised, I asked him, "What do you mean you don't remember? Don't you remember that you drove?" And he answered no. The last thing I remember is watching the movie on the couch and waking up here at the house. I hadn't even realized that I didn't remember anything. I told him all I did. I even remembered that he stayed working in the dining room, but I insisted on telling him that I didn't remember that. And well, nothing. We got worried and called his parents to ask why they hadn't come back on time. His mom said they arrived just after 7 and were disappointed we had left. They claimed they called our cell phones, but we didn't answer. But we didn't even have any missed calls. Besides, that was impossible because we left after 9:30. According to what I had seen on the clock, nothing made sense. I still don't know what happened that night. The time variations, the drowsiness, my baby not waking up even with a bath, not crying from hunger. After so many hours, Carlos not remembering anything. And above all, that unexplainable water that appeared in different places. I know that my story is practically not scary, but it is very, very strange. That's why I dare to ask, has anyone experienced something even remotely similar? I've never been able to explain this experience. I hope someone has an answer, no matter how fantastic it is. Thank you so much for sticking around and putting up with my sick voice. I hope there are still many of you listening that you haven't left it for later, because we have 2 really good stories left tonight. Please subscribe. Remember that it really helps us, and also leave us your thumbs up. And your comments, if you enjoy the content, it's a great way to support us. In the description, you'll find all the links you need, including the one to my book, Relatos de la Noche. But anyway, the break's over. Let's continue. Hi, Uriel. I'm a listener from a small town and want to share something that happened to me nearly 2 years ago in Chihuahua. I don't know if it's exactly going to be a horror story or even something paranormal, but it was something I haven't been able to forget. Something pretty traumatic. There are nights when, if I close my eyes, I can still remember that feeling. The silence, the darkness, and that figure standing in the middle of the road. It all started when my best friend from that first semester, who's from Chihuahua, invited me to spend Christmas with her family. She and I studied together at the university, and we had connected in a way I never had with anyone else. We had only been close for a few months, and of course I hadn't met her family yet, but if they were even half as kind as she was, that would be more than enough. That's why I agreed. She spoke about them with a lot of affection, but without giving me too many details, so they remained a mystery. I didn't have any plans for those dates, so I gladly accepted. I was excited by the idea of spending a different Christmas in another state, far from my routine. And also, since my dad is gone, my mom doesn't celebrate it at home anymore, and I don't get along very well with the rest of my family. I flew to the capital of that state, and there she and her parents picked me up. I remember that when we left the airport, it was already getting dark. The air was cold and very dry. We put my suitcases in the back of the truck and started the drive to her house. Her house. But the truth is that what I discovered later was much more than just a house. We drove over 3 hours, leaving the city and nearby towns to reach a place whose name, honestly, I don't want to reveal. It was a quiet town that felt old-fashioned. There, we continued a bit further on the road and then turned off onto a narrow path heading toward the mountains. For more than half an hour, we didn't see a single house, not a single light, nothing. Just the road winding between mountains and then plains, with the night falling completely over us. I was in the back seat looking out the window, and I had the strange feeling that we were leaving the world behind. Finally, we took a barely noticeable dirt exit. The truck started down a long road, surrounded by open fields, until suddenly, in the distance, some warm lights appeared. It was his family's ranch. I never thought my friend was so wealthy. The place looked like it was from a movie. A huge white fence surrounded the property. There were stables, trees lined up on the sides, and a wooden porch lit by lanterns. It was elegant yet rustic and well-maintained. We were greeted by 2 large snow-white dogs who ran up to us curiously, not aggressively. They were Great Pyrenees, guardians, imposing but noble. Only she and her parents were in that house. Due to the season, there were no workers at the ranch. All staff had left to spend the holidays with their families. They warned me from the beginning jokingly that if I wanted to stay, I would have to help with some basic chores. Feed the horses, pick things up, nothing complicated. It seemed perfect to me, honestly. I was delighted with the place, and Christmas was beautiful. We ate delicious food, listened to music, and laughed. There was almost no cell phone signal anywhere on the ranch, which at first I found relaxing. It felt like leaving the world behind. But on the 25th after lunch, I wanted to make a video call with my mom to see how she was doing. I moved all around the ranch looking for a signal, stretching out my arm, standing on a fence, climbing up a small wall. Nothing. The connection was so bad that it didn't last even 5 seconds without cutting off. I decided to borrow a truck to drive to the nearest town I knew how to reach. My friend and her parents told me it was no problem. They explained the way was pretty easy, basically just one road, but they gave me a warning with a lot of seriousness. Don't come back after it gets dark. If night falls, you could miss the turn to the ranch and get lost at night. You can't see anything at all. They told me that twice. I left calmly. The road to the town was easy. I arrived, parked in front of a little store, and finally, I was able to talk to my mom. I got so excited I lost track of time. I told her about the horses' ranch. I told her how Christmas dinner had been. I also took the opportunity to buy some needed personal items. When I realized it, the sun was already setting. I hurried, got in the truck, and started the way back. When I left the town, you could still see the last reddish tones in the sky. But in a matter of minutes, the road was completely plunged into darkness. And by darkness, I don't mean just a dimly lit road. It wasn't total blackness, a night that I think I've never experienced before. There was no visible moon, no headlights from other cars, no distant lights, no street lights, nothing. Just the road lit by my high beams and the rest completely empty. I drove alone for half an hour. I started to feel nervous. I forced myself to focus on the road, carefully looking for the exit that led to the ranch, making sure I wouldn't miss it. And the thing is, I knew that if I missed it, I could end up driving for miles and miles, going deeper into the mountains. Who knows, maybe even ending up who knows where. I found it almost by chance. I recognized it just as I was about to pass it, and I turned in time. The dirt road stretched out in front of me, completely dark. I moved forward slowly because there was still a long way to go before I could see the lights of the house in the distance. And it was along that stretch when, for some reason, an intrusive thought came to me. The idea of turning off the car lights for a second just to see that I couldn't see anything. I turned them off. Everything vanished, so much that I couldn't even see my hands on the steering wheel. I laughed nervously and turned them on again. I moved forward again and repeated it for 2 seconds. It was like floating in a void. There were no stars, no moon, no reflections, just darkness. A part of me started to feel a strange mix of fear, but also a kind of excitement, of curiosity. So, whether foolish or brave, I did it one more time. I moved forward in complete darkness for several seconds, challenging myself not to stop. But when I turned the lights back on, I slammed on the brakes. There, right at the edge of the high beam's light, there was something standing in the middle of the road, in front of me. A tall, motionless figure dressed completely in black. At first I thought it was a person, but the face wasn't human. It was long, thin, as if it was wearing a bird mask. A thin but very long dark beak that shone slightly in the light. In its hands, it held a long wooden staff, almost as tall as it was. It seemed like a woman, but I couldn't explain why. I was frozen. My first logical reaction was to think that it was someone playing a prank, but there, in the middle of nowhere, on a road that didn't even have any signs. There weren't any houses for miles around, not even a streetlight. Without hesitation, I hit the gas and went around him off the road to avoid him. As I did, I saw him slowly turn his head to follow me with his gaze, and then, in the rearview mirror, I saw him start walking toward me. Slowly, very slowly, but he was walking toward me. When I got to the ranch, shaking, I told them what I had seen. I expected laughter, disbelief, anything, but no. I instantly noticed my friend's expression. Her dad went out without saying anything, accompanied by the 2 dogs. He walked to the entrance and closed the main door, something that, as I had been told earlier, they never did. He released the dogs in the yard and returned. Then they started closing windows, locking doors, lowering curtains, all in silence, as if they knew exactly what to do, while my friend, according to her, was distracting me. Half an hour later, the dogs started barking loudly, a different kind of bark. Annoyed, they let them into the house, and then everyone, without another word, went to bed early that night. No one explained anything to me. Every time I tried to bring up the subject, my friend would avoid it both there and at school when we got back. She left the university a semester later. We lost contact because she doesn't use social media and constantly changes her phone, so I guess I'll never know exactly what I saw on that road. Good evening, community. I want to tell you a story that happened to me a while ago, and I'd like to know what you think. It all started in the previous house where I was living at that time. I was 12 years old and in middle school. One night, leaving the movies with my mom, we passed by a canal that was near the plaza. There was no one around, and the atmosphere was very calm. At that moment, I saw an old car parked there that I thought was really nice. I kept my eyes on it as we moved forward, and when I was about to turn back to look ahead, I noticed a woman next to me near the road, with short hair and torn clothes, doing a ballet split. Her face was pale, and she only turned her head to stare straight into my eyes. The image was so surreal that I started screaming in fear, and my mom had to stop the car. Because of how bad I got, she took me home as soon as I calmed down, and that night I was very afraid to sleep alone. The months went by, and the fear that came that night never went away. I didn't feel the same anymore. All the time I had the feeling that someone was watching me. I began having depressive episodes after hearing a female voice telling me to hurt myself. Those thoughts were very present in my mind. The room had a couch and an adjacent bathroom. From the bathroom, I thought someone was peeking out. I would cover my face, close my eyes, hide under the blankets, and listen. It was like that presence would come out of the bathroom, sit on the couch, and then go toward my bed. I could even feel the bed sink, like when someone sits down. I had to go to therapy because of how bad I was. 6 months had passed, and both my family and I were having a really hard time. I couldn't sleep and was scared all the time. There was a metal spiral staircase, and at 3 in the morning I could hear someone running down and forcefully touching me. One time while I was lying in my room, I had sleep paralysis. I opened my eyes but couldn't move. I heard the television in front of me, which I had left on, and I tried to look at it. I wanted to wake up because I knew something was there, but when I looked over, I saw it. That woman, that dancer, was in my room, staring at me intently. I couldn't do anything but cry, until I managed to close my eyes and fall asleep again. A few weeks later, while watching a movie with my family, I felt like I went into a trance. I felt an intense, agonizing pain unlike anything before. I felt desperation, deep desperation and sadness. My mom saw me crying. She saw me in a really bad state, and therapy didn't seem to be helping me. She asked me if everything was okay. I didn't know how to explain to her that it wasn't me, that the desperation, that sadness, wasn't mine. Already tired of all this, my mom dared to contact a man who performed cleansings, and we went to see him as soon as possible. This man told my mom that she had to bring me in soon because there was a woman behind me, a dead one, and he also told her something he had no way of knowing, that he knew I had already seen several psychologists, that this wasn't what I needed at that moment, that this sadness wasn't going to be fixed that way. After cleansing me, he passed his hand over my face and I started crying desperately. I couldn't stop. When I finally calmed down, after almost an hour, I felt immense relief, and from that moment on, I never felt sadness again. No, at least that sadness and the negative thoughts disappeared. She was gone.